In this video, I'm going to walk you through the process of installing LAS 9. In order to get going, you need to have the prerequisites installed, which includes a Java JDK and a Tomcat servlet container. We recommend the Adopt OpenJDK download. We use the Java 8 long-term support version with the Hotspot JVM for all of our production servers. You also need to have Tomcat installed. We use Tomcat 8. Always get the latest Tomcat. Subscribe to the mailing list so you can get updates about any security issues that come up with Tomcat, so you can keep that upgraded and up to date. So after that, you get into the things that we provide at PMEL. The first thing you need is installation of PyFerret. I'm not going to go through the installation of PyFerret. There's a lot of documentation about how to do that on the PyFerret website if you just follow these links. But I will say that we recommend using Miniconda and then doing the Conda install of PyFerret and Python, all the Python prerequisites. It's just one command on the command line for Conda, get all that stuff installed, and then once that environment's set, you can run the Conda version of PyFerret from within LAS. So the first thing we have to install ourselves is the Ferret Threads data server, which is a computation engine that sits behind LAS that does averages and regridding and things on behalf of LAS. It's just a thread server. You can install your own thread server to serve data in parallel alongside this in the same Tomcat container. It doesn't interfere with anything, and we won't mess with your threads server from LAS. So in order to get that done, you have to start out with creating a content directory in your Tomcat. So this is Tomcat home. I have 6 Tomcats running on this server for all my testing. So this directory is called Tomcat 6. It's not because it's version 6, it's just the 6th one that I've installed. This is what it looks like out of the box as far as the directory structure. And you know, if you have installed threads before, it makes a content directory. And then under that content directory, it puts all its configuration. So we're going to put the configuration we need for the Ferret data server under there. And we can get that from the assets on the release, this FTDS tar file. So expand that, makes a FTDS directory. That has to be done as the first step before you do any of the other installation steps, because that has to be in place when the internal LAS Ferret Threads data server starts up. So we can remove tar file. We don't need that anymore. We're all set there. So next thing we do is we'll head over to a temporary directory, and we'll get this threads, LAS threads war file. So when you download this, you have to rename it, or after you've downloaded it, you have to rename it, and it has to have the name LAS threads.war. It has to have that name because that's Tomcat magic that creates a context in the Tomcat server called /LAS/threads, and that's what we use internally for our computations. And that doesn't serve any data to the outside. It's not visible to the outside. It's just what we use internally in LAS. So now we have that threads war file. We can go to our Tomcat web apps directory and drop that file in. So that server's running, and I've got the hot deploy set up, I believe. Yeah, so it's now expanding that that WAR file and putting that application in place. So once that's deployed, once that directory structure is under there, you can look at, it's just a thread server, but it has some classes in this Gov directory that we have installed into threads to do some computations for us, and then we're going to put some stuff in that resources directory, but this is separate from your own threads installation. So that's going, we go ahead and shut down this Tomcat while we do a few other things, then we'll be able to bring it back up. All right, so next step, we've got FTDS, we've got the WAR file installed with the correct name. So now we're going to go into Tomcat and create a setenv.sh file in the bin directory, which will set up our environment for running LAS. So anytime you put a setenv.sh file in the Tomcat bin directory, the startup process will run that and apply that environment to the running Tomcat. If you already have one, you can just append the commands that you need to that existing file. So in the distribution assets for the release, I have an example that we'll get. Download that, and then we'll set it up. So you need Tomcat Home. This example happens to be set to my Tomcat Home. I happen to know that already, but wherever you installed that OpenJDK, you need to set that up. Then you need to set up the content route for your threads server. Now this content route, it gets applied to this entire Tomcat container. So it applies to your regular threads and it applies to this threads, but it just points to the content directory, so that's fine. Under that content directory, there's /threads for a regular threads server, and there's /ftds for ours. So remember, our directory is called Tomcat 6. This endorsed directory, part of the standard Tomcat setup. We run Java as headless, and we give it some memory for our production servers. We give 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 gigs, but you don't need to give it that much memory for LAS for just a small installation or for your testing. So we write the process ID of the running Tomcat there, so the startup scripts can use that. There's the Catalina Home. Now these last 2 items apply specifically to LAS. This Spring config location is just any directory on your server that the Tomcat user can read while Tomcat is running and can write to while Tomcat is running. So it can be outside of the Tomcat directory. It can be somewhere else on that server that has write permission, and so you can talk to your system administrators about where is a great place to set that up. So I'm just going to make a directory in my home directory called conf6, C-O-N-F-6, and I'm going to make some subdirectories under it that I'll show you when we get over there. And in that, LAS expects to find this application.yaml file, which we'll build next. And then this just tells LAS, tells the application what port you're running on. So that's all set up. So when Tomcat starts up again, that environment will be applied. So now we go to my home directory, make this conf6. Directory, and let's see, let's make a subdirectory LAS, and in that directory we'll make a subdirectory called DB where we'll store the databases, and we'll make a directory called scripts where LAS will write the scripts. We'll talk about all that stuff here in a second. Now we need to set up this application YAML file, so we'll get that. Remember, we told LAS to expect that file to be in this directory to be read. So this is the data source. You can use any Grails data source that you want. You can use MySQL, whatever you want. But in this particular case, we're using the H2 in-memory database that gets persisted out to disk. So, and we've used it with up to 10,000 data sets, and it's fine. Just give it a silly name and a blank password for the time being. So now we're going to write the database somewhere. And we decided that it would be conf6 LASDB. So when LAS starts up, it'll make a couple of files in there with the proddb as the file name root. So that's where all the information that LAS is reading when it's in production that has all of the dataset configurations in it. That's where that information will be stored. So if you set up PyFerret through Miniconda, then you're gonna, when you activate that environment, if you look for this Python variable, it'll point to /miniconda/env/pyferret/python or whatever. That's the right answer for that. And then all of these other fir directories, the right answer is whatever is in your environment when you're ready to run PyFerret. So let's see. So I just depend on the environment that's set up by the Ferret team on this server. So if I say env grep fir, there they are. So I'll just grab all those and put them into this file. Oops, not what I wanted. All right, so we have to change the formatting here a little bit. We don't need it to read the dot directory as part of the Firgo scripts. We don't need it to read dot directory for any of these. So whatever your favorite editor is, you can charge through these, get these set up. Oops. Keep doing that. All right, so there's the Ferret environment. If you change that environment, next time LAS starts up, it will read that new environment. So if you have to upgrade your Ferret, or you want to test out a beta version of PyFerret or something with your server, you can always change it and it'll be good to go. So this is where LAS will write the temporary scripts that it uses to run PyFerret. And if you remember, we made that directory in my home directory. So that's good. And then this is how this server will be seen from the outside. So for a few things that we do, we have to pass a full URL to Ferret so that it can use OpenDAP to read the data source. And we can't pass a relative URL because Ferret doesn't know what the web server is. So this is what your server looks like from outside. In this case, there will be no outside. It will just be internal behind our firewall with that funky port number. And this is the password for the administrative interface. So two things to say about this. It should be a good, strong password, not junk like this. But when LAS is running, if you run on an internal server and depend on a web appliance or Apache or some other server to do the proxy, then the admin interface won't be visible to the outside at all. So you'll access that through your internal URL, and the external URL the external interface won't allow the admin directories through. So that's a little bit of an extra security measure. Okay, so application YAML all set up. Now, in theory, we can put our LAS WAR file in place and then start up. So this is the asset that is the actual LAS application. So drop that into the web apps directory. And start up our server. I didn't expect it to take this long to start up, but hopefully we'll be back up in action soon. Wow. All right, so it started finally, and the LAS user interface is loading up. When LAS loads up, by default, it's got 3 data sets in it. You should be able to drop down into one of them. You should be able to make a plot right away, so to let you know that you got everything configured correctly as far as PyFair is concerned, all the things that you need to do. And then, along with This LAS is an administrative interface, and we set the password for this. Username is admin, and you should be able to sign into that, and from there you should be able to add data sets, delete the default data sets, organize the data however you want it. So there's a separate video that explains how to do all of that. But at this point, LAS is installed and ready to go.